Hello and welcome to a Spectrum News Decision 2017 special. I'm Tim Boyum. You're about to hear from the candidates running for the office of Mayor of Raleigh in a debate. The mayor chairs the city council and is elected citywide to a 2-year term. Raleigh has a nonpartisan system of government for its city council. This year, Nancy McFarlane and Charles Francis are the top two candidates. And Mr. Francis called for a runoff election after neither candidate received 50% of the vote in October. Let's introduce you to the candidates. Nancy McFarlane is the incumbent mayor of Raleigh, a post she has held since 2011. She is a pharmacist and business owner and has lived in Raleigh for 35 years. She received just over 48% of the vote in the October 10th election. Charles Francis is a native of Raleigh and the challenger in the race. He is a lawyer and has served as a law clerk and prosecutor. Mr. Francis has also served on the Raleigh City Council and the Raleigh Planning Commission. He received just under 37% of the vote in the October 10th election. We'd like to welcome both Ms. McFarlane and Mr. Francis for joining us tonight. Good to see you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
The debate will be on topics relating to civic affairs in Raleigh. I have chosen the topics and the questions, and they have not been shared with the candidates. The ground rules for the debate are as follows. Each candidate will get 1 minute to respond to the questions. Each candidate will also get 30 seconds to rebut. We will alternate the answers and rebuttals between the candidates. And let me say, it has nothing to do with personal nature, but I will cut off candidates if they exceed the allowed time. There will be no opening statements, but each candidate gets 90 seconds for a closing statement. And the candidate who gets the first question and first closing statement was determined by a coin flip. That coin flip was aired statewide Thursday night on Capitol Tonight and was determined that the first question goes to Mayor McFarlane. A News and Observer analysis of the primary results shows a clear split regarding your support. Nancy McFarlane winning the West and Charles Francis winning the East. The analysis shows predominantly white areas chose Ms. McFarlane. Voters in areas of the city with high percentages of minority residents chose Mr. Francis. Do you believe there is division in this city racially and or socioeconomically, yes or no? And second, how do you propose to support those voters who voted for your opponent? Ms. McFarlane, your 60 seconds starts now.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I appreciate it very much. You know, what we're seeing is not unique just to Raleigh. There are a great number of things that are dividing us across the country. Income inequity is something that we're facing as a country, and it's seen to a greater extent in urban areas. That's why I have led this council in looking at issues such as affordable housing. This council has done more to address affordable housing than any previous council. Also working on job opportunity programs. I just recently started one called IT Beginnings, which gives people the opportunity to learn skills to enter the job market. We held a series of community conversations, the police chief and I did last year, where we went all throughout the city and met with people of all races, all incomes, all ethnicity, and really sat and listened to what their concerns were, and that will help lead us to developing solutions.
Mr. Francis, your 60 seconds starts now.
Well, thank you very much for hosting this debate. I think it's very important that the voters of Raleigh get an opportunity to assess both candidates side by side, our leadership, our education and training, and our vision for leading the city forward. I'm proud of the votes that I got in East Raleigh, but I'm also proud of the votes that I got in the western part of Raleigh. There were 30 precincts that I lost by less than 100 votes. And we're going to be working hard in those precincts and all over town to increase my support. Listen, I was born and raised in Raleigh. I love Raleigh, and I came back home after finishing college and law school because I love people from all over Raleigh, and I want to represent people from all over Raleigh because the people from all over Raleigh are my people. There were inequities that were reflected in those vote totals, and those are disparities that have existed for a long time and that I'm going to work to lead us to address.
Ms. McFarlane, your 30-second rebuttal starts now.
Well, thank you. You know, as mayor of all of Raleigh for the past 6 years, I've been intimately involved with people all across the city. And, you know, like my opponent says, I also had strong support in many of the different precincts. And I think the fact that I've really done the hard work to be involved with the citizens, to really find out what is it that is the most important to them, what is it that's affecting their lives. And I've been able to pull together resources that can help people. Sometimes it's needing health care. So,
Okay, sorry, I got to stop with Mr. Francis, 30 seconds.
Well, the disparities that exist in Raleigh are historic disparities. And I think we'll get to talk a lot more over the course of this debate about what this mayor and this council have done to address those disparities. My vision is much more robust for dealing with those issues and for leading people from all over Raleigh. And I look forward to exploring that over the course of this debate tonight, Tim.
All right, time for our second question. Affordable housing has been a big topic in this race and for the city as a whole. We've all heard the numbers about average rent in Wake County compared to the average affordability. Ms. McFarlane, you have touted the city's promise to spend $60 million in it over the next 10 years. Mr. Francis, you have discussed using tax credits and city-owned land to create more affordable housing. Beyond money and credits, what is your vision for affordable housing, and do you believe gentrification is a problem in Raleigh? Mr. Francis, you have 60 seconds.
Well, I don't think gentrification is the problem. Displacement of people is the problem from communities that they have lived in for decades and for much of their life. That's what the real issue is. Look, Raleigh is experiencing a creeping affordability crisis. And we don't want to be like San Francisco and some of these other cities that have lots of liberal ideas, but that moderate income and working people increasingly cannot afford to live in. The mayor has touted her tax increase for housing, but that 1 cent tax increase is too little, too late, and it's not the right approach. My focus will be on preserving existing affordable housing and on aggressively engaging the private sector through tax credit development and through other incentives to create more affordable housing. One of the affordable communities that we need to preserve is Winters Haven. That community has not been bought yet, and what aggressive leadership would do would be to step in to find a way to keep Winters Haven affordable for its senior residents.
Ms. McFarlane, your 60 seconds starts now.
Well, thank you, and we are concerned with displacement, and since you brought up using the 4% tax credit, just this Tuesday we approved a project that will keep people where they live now. We'll be replacing a little over 250 units that are dilapidated with new units that will allow people to stay there. There's also a second phase to that will involve a 5-star child care facility, some senior housing, and also opportunities for home ownership. So we work with 9% tax credits in partnership, and we are working with the 4% tax credits in partnership. We also have programs where we go into homes and rehabilitate them so that seniors can stay in their homes. We have a variety, a menu of options. We are limited by the state legislature in what we can do. We don't have a lot of the tools other cities have, so I put together a group with ULI of developers, bankers, people in that industry that are developing a cool toolkit for us.
Mr. Francis, 30 seconds.
Well, look, as I said, we have a creeping affordability crisis, and what's needed is not a variety or menu of options. What's needed is leadership to get to the heart of the problem and move us forward in preserving people's homes and in creating more apartments and home ownership opportunities. I have done that for 20 years as counsel to the Raleigh Housing Authority. I have done that as a founding director of North State Bank, and I'm ready to provide that leadership to the people of Raleigh so that we can create more access to housing for a variety of people all over Raleigh.
Ms. McFarlane, 30 seconds.
Well, I'll just bring up a couple things. I think leadership is pulling people together and finding solutions and new ways to address problems, because obviously some of the old ways that we're using aren't working. Raleigh Housing Authority is not really keeping up with the number of units they're replacing, and they should be working with seniors at Winters Haven and other places that are there with vouchers to make sure that those vouchers are reassigned so that they can find a new place to live.
Okay, thank you very much. Question number 3. Voters just approved a property tax increase with the transportation bond. Voters did approve that. However, the most recent budget included a property tax increase for employee raises. Last year, property taxes were raised for affordable housing in Dix Park. In 2015, property taxes were raised for parks. Do you think more taxes are necessary in the next several years? And should growth be paying for a larger portion of growth? Mayor McFarlane, 60 seconds.
You know, growth paying for growth is sort of a catchphrase that we hear a lot, but it never really works out that way. When we see new developments, housing developments, it costs us much more money as a city than it does to have, say, a tall skyscraper erected downtown, because we already have the infrastructure, police, fire, sewer, water. So it depends on what type of growth that you have. And we have been very prudent in raising taxes. We still have one of the lowest cost of services anywhere in North Carolina in the country, and yet we provide the best quality of life. That is evident by the number of people we see moving here all the time. But we always are very mindful whenever we consider raising taxes. Raising taxes to increase pay for our first responders, we thought was a worthwhile thing to do. Excuse me, but maintaining the financial stability and security of the city is incredibly important. And it's important not to overpromise people things without a plan to pay for them. So,
Ms. Ferrand, thank you very much. Mr. Francis, 60 seconds.
Well, I am in favor of keeping property taxes as low as possible. In my practice as a lawyer, I've seen many people, especially seniors, who were land rich but cash poor and had a difficult time in paying their property taxes, and that had an impact on affordability. As I said, I think that the 1 cent property tax increase for affordable housing was too little too late and the wrong approach, and I would have pursued other approaches. Now, with respect to the pay for first responders that Mayor McFarlane referred to, you know, it took 1.5 years for that pay increase to be approved for our policemen. That was unfair to our policemen, and it put us all at risk. Just recently, there was a kerfuffle on the council where the benefits of firefighters were changed on the consent agenda without their knowledge, and according to Ms. McFarlane, without her knowledge. That's not the type of financial management that I would lead the council in as mayor.
Ms. McFarlane, 30 seconds.
this is more than 30 seconds, but having the business experience that I have and having run a city for 6 years, I understand just how complex retooling the entire compensation system was. We did give our first responders a raise in April before the budget. We came in with another raise, and we passed the staff recommendations. There were some unintended impacts on benefits, but what I did was bring the police and fire into the room, discuss it with them, work out a solution that we all agreed on, took it to council, had it voted on the next day, and that's how leadership solves problems.
Mr. Francis, 30 seconds.
There were sanitation workers who were out picketing and protesting this week because the mayor failed to meet and confer with them. That's not how leadership works. One of the things that those workers were complaining about is that while their pay was supposed to go up, it actually went down. Again, that's not how leadership should work. I will be open to all people of Raleigh and all employees of Raleigh as Raleigh's next mayor.
All right, the next question. Raleigh is a big place, could see 600,000 residents by 2035. It has a lot of roads, so we don't have time to talk about specific individual roads, rail stops, or bus stops. However, please tell us for your vision about how your work over the next 2, 4, 6 years would impact transit and what it would look like 20 years from now based on that work, and even better, perhaps, how you would pay for it. Mr. Francis, 60 seconds.
So Raleigh's transit system has improved over the last 6 to 10 years, and I congratulate Ms. McFarlane and her colleagues on the City Council for those improvements. But you know, the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement, and we've got a lot of improvement to do. Specific things that I would do to increase the transit system and to reduce traffic congestion in Raleigh is, number one, we need to reduce the wait times further on all routes, not just some routes. Second, we need to improve the shelters and stops so that people who are waiting all over town have a shelter over them and a decent place to wait. And third, we need to improve the management and technology of our transit system so that it's operated in a much more business-like and efficient way. The system is heavily subsidized. It's not very efficient at all. And I think that with much better management, we'd have a system that not only people who have no choice to ride the bus would take, but people who also had cars would more frequently choose to ride.
Ms. McFarlane, your minute starts now.
Sure. You know, transit and transportation system is a great piece of the quality of life here. One of the things we have done is we're getting ready to open Union Station, which will serve as a hub for multimodal transportation. It's really about providing people choice in how they get around. One of the immediate effects of the transit referendum that was passed last fall that I worked very hard on is we have increased services to 15-minute headways on New Bern Avenue, South Saunders Street, Capitol Boulevard. We added Sunday service. You know, we just passed a transportation bond to help alleviate the congestion. In the transit referendum, part of what we have submitted is an increase in shelters. It's also increasing the walkability and making sure there are sidewalks and access and the ability of people to get to those transit stops. It's going to be a major piece moving forward, not only how we get around in the city, how we get around in the state, and it's also a key piece of affordability, because if you can get around in this city and not have to have a car.
I gotta stop you, I'm sorry, okay. I'm sorry. Mr. Francis, 30 seconds.
Well, I agree with Ms. McFarlane that having a good transit system is important, not just to physical mobility, but it's also important to social mobility, and that's one of the things that's the most important to me. But look, we've got to operate city government more at the speed of business and more like business. And the problem with this transit system is it's just not a well-managed system. I have met with a number of tech leaders and businessmen over the course of this campaign. One of them from a company called Transloc, who would be a wonderful company to get great ideas from on how to improve our transit system.
Ms. McFarlane, 30 seconds.
And that's good, because we're already talking to him. Transloc is going to be the app that we use. You'll be able to see when each bus is coming, the times, the weight, where they're going. It's a huge asset. A lot of people are using it now, digitizing our stations, providing real-time updates. All of those are in the Wake County Transit Plan. Unfortunately, it got tied up in politics and we had to wait for it to get passed, but the county commissioners moved it forward and it's passed, and I look forward to moving forward with all those items.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question. Mr. Francis, you have criticized Ms. McFarlane for focusing too much on bike trails and just Dix Park. But are those not important tools for quality of life and economic development as well? And Ms. McFarlane, have you put too much emphasis and dollars on Dix Park when there are other pressing needs across the city? We'll start with you, Ms. McFarlane, 60 seconds.
Well, this is the thing about running a successful city. It's not an either or. It's very easy to pull something out, but that's really presenting a false choice. Dix Park is going to be an economic driver for this city for generations. It's an economic driver for businesses. It's going to bring tourism, the development that goes on around it. You can look at any city in the country that has a central park, and we have the opportunity to create one like no other, and that is what drives people and businesses to come here. As for bike lanes, you know, bike lanes save lives. So that is my comment about bike lanes. You know, we are spending money. We spent in the last bond referendum in 2014, it was about a $90 million bond. We spent almost $30 million just in District C. So we are investing in things that improve quality of life all the way around. You always have to look at things in context of a large budget.
Mr. Francis, your minute starts now.
3 main points. Point number 1, I support Dix Park, and the planning process should go forward, but it needs to be an inclusive process where people are actually listened to in terms of what they want to see on the Dix campus. Point number 2, parks are important to our quality of life. I grew up playing basketball and tennis at parks all over Raleigh: Roberts Park, Chavis Heights, J.C. Park, Optimus, Millbrook Exchange, and so I believe in parks. But parks are not as important as good jobs with high pay and access to housing in terms of people's quality of life. Now, third point, with respect to parks, here's the thing. Dix is important, but we've got to have equity in the way that we approach our parks budget and our parks funding. It's not right that there are parks in Southeast Raleigh that still don't have air conditioning in the gym. it's not right that the Moore Square project really is turning out to be sort of the advanced blade of gentrification moving into the community. We've got to have equity in the way that we approach our parks funding.
Okay.
Ms. McFarlane, 30 seconds.
Well, I'm glad to hear you support Dix Park now, because early in the campaign you did not support Dix Park. The process will be incredibly inclusive. In fact, one of the reasons that we hired Michael Van Valkenburg to be our lead designer, one of the things he said that really struck home with me is he said, I want everyone to feel that this is their park. I want 16-year-old African-American teenagers to feel like this is their park, that they can go in and they are welcome. So he really gets it. As for equity, our park spending and our park bonds are always equally spread across all of our city council districts.
Mr. Francis, 30 seconds.
Well, in the process that we go through with Dix Park, again, as I said before, I support Dix Park, and if it's done properly over decades, Dix Park will be an asset to Raleigh. But we need to be concerned not about people who are going to be in Raleigh 50 years from now, but about people who are in Raleigh right now and improving their quality of life. As respects engagement in that process, what we need to do is not just go through the charade of citizen engagement, which this council and this mayor have too often done, but to really listen to people and to implement their ideas and suggestions so that what they want to do will be reflected in the end product.
Next question. There's a new proposal for a new $165 million government complex. Ms. McFarlane, your opponent has criticized you for what he calls a costly project where money could be used elsewhere. Why is this cost justified, and could it be done cheaper? Mr. Francis, why shouldn't a growing city that wants to be considered one of the top cities in the country have a top-notch facility where workers can be all in one place? Mr. Francis, your minute starts now.
So this is one of the key differences between me and Ms. McFarlane. I am not for building a $165 million Taj Mahal City Hall before we deal with these other pressing needs that we've been talking about in this debate and in this campaign. There are much more cost-effective and environmentally sensitive ways to deal with the need for new government office space than tearing down a 34-year-old office building and hauling all of that concrete and that steel to the dump. For example, one of the things we could do is look at renovating and recycling some of the buildings that are on the Dix campus. That would be a wonderful place to put the headquarters, for example, for the parks. Or what we could do is look at underserved areas of Raleigh that need and want more development in East Raleigh and disperse some services there. It's just the wrong priority to waste $165 million on a new Taj Mahal City Hall.
Ms. McFarlane, your minute.
Okay, I think what a lot of people don't know about me is my strong business background. I started, ran, and grew a business, a big business, and I understand numbers and business efficiencies. You know, the number that Mr. Francis is throwing around is very preliminary. We are in the listening stage, and I can guarantee you that whatever decision comes out of this, it will be a smart business decision. This is about consolidating operations. It's about providing efficiencies and saving us money. You know, this is a false choice that it's this or something else, and perhaps you don't really understand how government works, but you have to understand the concepts of business and how people work together to understand what this final product would mean.
Mr. Francis, 30 seconds.
As a lawyer, I've been battling government agencies on behalf of citizens and families for the last 25 years. And what I understand is that too often people get into government and they think that whatever end they have justifies the means. In this case, what I'm saying is I would rather spend the money on other priorities, or I would rather let the citizens keep the money so that they can pay off the mortgages on their own homes, so that they can pay to send their kids to college, so that they can take the travel they want or have the retirement they want. It's a question of having the priorities of a private citizen and not of a long-term government official.
Ms. McFarlane, 30 seconds.
And once again, you're misleading the people by providing false numbers and false choices. It's not somebody taking a vacation or us having a new city hall. It's how we look and plan. We have citizens and buildings all over the city. And what consolidates operations, provides us efficiencies, and what saves us money and saves the taxpayer money in the long run that matters.
All right, thank you very much. We have time for one last question here before closing statements. This is a nonpartisan race. Ms. McFarlane, you have criticized Mr. Francis for inserting partisan politics, yet you have criticized Mr. Francis for meeting with Republicans. Mr. Francis, you have been criticized for meeting with Republicans and have called the mayor and her supporters pseudo-liberal Democrats. Should party labels matter in this race, and is it naive to think a growing city like Raleigh, party labels don't matter? Ms. McFarlane, you have a minute.
You know, I think that to some people, party labels matter very much, and to some they don't. I am unaffiliated, and I have always believed that my primary job is to work for the city of Raleigh. It doesn't matter if I'm working with a Democrat, it doesn't matter if I'm working with a Republican, and having that unaffiliated stature allows me a great deal of flexibility. It allows me to work with people all across the state. It allows me to work in the General Assembly. You know, it allows me to bypass the partisan fighting that we're seeing in Washington and we're seeing across the country that brings things to a grinding halt. That's why this city has been successful. That's why we've been able to move forward. That's why we've been able to attract business, because I've worked very hard to keep our council focused on the city of Raleigh and not dissolve into what letter you have by your name, because what we can accomplish together is much more important than what party we stand with.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Francis. A minute.
First, I am the only Democrat in this race. I'm proud to have been a Democrat all of my life and to come from a proud tradition of Democrats. And I'm proud to have the endorsement and support of the Wake County Democratic Party. Having said that, I have many friends around Raleigh and around this state and country who are Republicans. Recently, Ms. McFarlane and I were both invited to address the Republican Executive Committee. I am the only candidate on this stage who chose to go. And the reason I did that is because to lead, you have to engage all people. And so I went to the Republican Executive Committee and talked about our shared values and the things that we have in common and how I hope to lead all of the people of Raleigh. I have the support of Mr. Fitz, who was the Republican candidate. And I am proud to have support from Democrats, Republicans, and independents in this race. That's leadership.
Ms. McFarlane, 30 seconds.
Well, I've spent 10 years in this job, and I've spent many more years in the business community. And what I have is strong bonds and support from people all across the board. You know, the only reason I did not go was because I had a conflict, and I will always talk to anybody, but I don't really feel that seeking out a party endorsement at this point in time is that important. I think it's more important to listen to the concerns of the citizens, to bring the city together, to keep moving forward. We are an incredibly successful city, and I've done it by reaching across the aisle and working with everyone, and I'm going to continue doing it.
Ms. McFarlane, thank you. 30 seconds before we get to closing statements.
Well, you know, this is a case of Ms. McFarlane talking out of both sides of her mouth again. She says that being an independent is what allows her to work with both sides and with Republicans at the General Assembly. But then when she gets an invitation to go talk with Republicans right here in our own community, she snubs them. And I know that's how they felt because that's what they told me. I'm not going to snub anybody in Raleigh. As the mayor of Raleigh, I'm going to lead all of the people of Raleigh, not just in rhetoric, but in reality.
All right, thank you both for a great discussion. It is now time for closing statements. The candidates will each have 90 seconds. Ms. McFarlane, your 90 seconds starts now.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim and Spectrum News, for the invitation to be here, and thanks to everyone for watching. You know, in my 6 years as mayor and the 4 years serving on the city council before that, there was always one thing that drove my decisions, and that is what can we do to make life better for the citizens of Raleigh? And that's why I've worked to recruit companies and grow businesses here, to provide good paying jobs. And that's why we want people to have a good quality of life. That's why we bought Dix Park. As a matter of fact, we are spending more money on affordable housing than we are paying for Dix Park right now. You know, we invest in greenways. We invest in parks and cultural events. Our programs are all designed with the diversity of our citizens in mind. People want to come here because of the work we've done, so our challenge now is to manage that growth. That's why I supported our transit referendum that will provide new opportunities and choices for people in how they get around in the future. We will continue to provide leadership that encourages housing affordability, and I will continue to work with our community and neighborhood leaders to help us shape policy, and we will address people's needs and their concerns. You know, Raleigh is in good shape, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to be the mayor for all of Raleigh. I want to continue to provide the steady, dependable, reasoned leadership that has proven to move Raleigh forward. I would be grateful for your help to keep Raleigh moving forward. Thank you very much.
Ms. McFarlane, thank you very much. Mr. Francis, your 90 seconds starts now.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for this opportunity to debate. And Ms. McFarlane, thank you for this opportunity for us to appear together and debate. As a lawyer, I've made a lot of closing arguments. This closing argument that I'm making today and over the next 2 weeks in this campaign is as important to me as any that I've ever made. I feel that way because Raleigh is my home. I was born and raised here, and I chose to come back here after college and law school. The people of Raleigh are great, but the city of Raleigh is good but not great. And the reason is because we are not effectively meeting the challenges that come with growth, and because too many people are being left out. And when I say too many people are being left out, for example, in obtaining access to housing, that should not be seen as a comment that's on behalf of one group or another. Teachers, cops, firefighters, symphony musicians, people from all different backgrounds need and have to have affordable housing. I have worked with and led people from diverse backgrounds since I was small. When I was bused from Southeast Raleigh to North Raleigh in the 3rd grade, I was the president of the student body at Effie Green. When I walked to Ligon, I was the president of the student body at Ligon. When I was bused back out to Sanderson, I was the president of the student body at Sanderson. I say that not because titles are important, because I've worked effectively with people from diverse backgrounds all of my life, from the time I was a child through my adulthood, and that's what I'm going to continue to do as the mayor of Raleigh. If you believe in that type of cooperation and collegial leading, then I ask for your support as mayor of Raleigh.
Mr. Francis, Ms. McFarlane, thank you both very much for being here for this important discussion for the future of Raleigh. Thank you so much. And taking part, good luck in the upcoming election to both of you. And thank you, the voters, for watching this Decision 2017 special Raleigh Mayoral debate. You can watch the full debate on our website at spectrumlocalnews.com. Remember, early voting has opened. Election day is Tuesday, November 7th. I'm Tim Boyum. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Ms. Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good to have you in.